If tomorrow, everything you are teaching your child becomes useless, would you dare to listen to the rest of this video? Episode 01. The Stability Trap. Greetings to those carrying the weight of family, children, and a piece of your own legacy in 2026. There is a very cold truth. No prestigious university in the US or Europe will tell you this. Right finger the experiences that helped you succeed for the past 20 years are silently becoming a life sentence for the 30-year future of your children. We are teaching our children to adapt. But in a world where machines evolve by the second, human adaptation is merely running slower in a race where the result is already programmed. The problem is not that your child is poor at adapting. It's that this world no longer rewards adaptation. Look at your child's hands and ask yourself very slowly, right finger 30 years from now, what will those hands still be able to do? When every logical process, every calculation, even the most complex management decisions, are handed over to an operating system costing a few dollars a month? Throughout the 20th century, the global middle class was built on one belief: study hard, have deep expertise, have a stable lifelong career. Doctors, lawyers, engineers, experts. But you forgot one thing. Right finger humans must accumulate knowledge for a lifetime. Machines only need a single update. What used to be stability is now becoming the most comfortable trap of the era. We think we are preparing a safe path for our children, but in reality, we are lining them up in a queue to be replaced. The new fragmented world. The world is no longer simply divided into US, China, East, West. It is fragmenting in a different, more dangerous way. Small diamond one side consists of autonomous thinking subjects. Small diamond one side consists of objects living off algorithms. If you still teach your child only to become a skilled professional, then let me be blunt. Right finger you are training them to become cheap components in a machine they will never have the right to control. 30 years from now, AI can understand customer psychology better than any marketing expert. AI can design structures more accurately than the best architect. AI can analyze risk faster than a board of directors. Right finger so where does your child exist in that value chain? It's not that your child will be poor. It's that they might live adequately, but no longer have the right to choose. The greatest pain for the middle-aged generation in old age is not the lack of money. Right finger it is seeing their children and grandchildren live in abundance, but completely losing their survival identity. They have food. They have entertainment. They have amenities. But waiting for an algorithm to suggest what to eat today. Waiting for a system to decide what to study. Waiting for a platform to tell them who to believe, who to hate. The self-reliance that ancestors once spent blood and time to gain is now traded for short-term convenience. It is a golden cage, and its door is not in your child's hands. So if we don't teach our children to adapt, what must we prepare them for? Conclusion. The 30YEAR commitment. This 45-episode series was not made to follow trends. We set a very strict standard. Right finger this content must still be valuable in the year 2056. We do not teach skills that will be obsolete in a few years. We talk about the essence of human existence. In a world where everything can be replaced. 30 years from now, when you are no longer there to shield your child, I hope they will remember. Right finger self-reliance does not start with skills. It starts with the courage to let go of old experiences and look straight at the cold truth of the future. Next episode, we will talk about why the flexible economy is eroding the backup capacity of an entire generation. Episode 02. The Dead Border. When a passport is no longer a survival ticket. If tomorrow all your accounts were locked, do you think the passport in your drawer could save your family? You are proud to be a US citizen, or European, or from a rising nation in Asia. You believe that nationality is the final shield. When the world is in chaos, I'll tell you straight, that belief is obsolete. By 2056, National borders. Things drawn with blood, war, and treaties for thousands of years will no longer be the place that decides who lives in safety. Power has left the map. It is sitting in the servers. Right now. Tech corporations and cross-border AI systems know what you think, know what you buy, know what you fear, and influence your decisions more strongly than the law. They own your data more than any government does. That is no longer the future. It is the present. 30 years from now, the question is not, where does your child live? But, which ecosystem does your child belong to? The world is fragmenting into islands of digital power. There, citizenship rights, right to access resources, right to make a living, are decided by the level of connection to the technological core, not by a residential address. Your child can live in New York or London, but if they do not possess independent digital capacity, they are just squatters in their own homeland. Imagine a middle-aged man in 2056 has a house, has a car, has a life that seems stable. In just 1 second, his account is restricted. Services are cut off. The ability to transact vanishes. No army protects him. No passport helps him cross the digital gateway. He wasn't invaded. He was excluded from the system. That is the new form of dependency. If you still only teach your child, study hard, get a degree, have a good nationality, then you are letting your child go to war without wearing armor. The greatest risk is not losing your country. The greatest risk is losing personal autonomy. A generation that has a homeland, but no right to independent survival. We are not telling you to abandon your homeland. We are telling you that you must prepare for a world where a homeland is no longer enough to protect your child. Self-reliance in the next 30 years means understanding technology, not worshiping it. Creating value, not just consuming it. Keeping control of data, skills, and mindset. Borders of barbed wire will rust, but borders of algorithms will be colder and sharper than ever. Don't let your child become a refugee inside their own bedroom. If national borders can no longer protect your child, the next thing to collapse is education. Are you breathing a sigh of relief because your child just received an admission letter from a prestigious university in the US? Or an international school with billions in tuition? Are you ready to mortgage assets? Pour all your resources into a bachelor's degree, a master's? Look straight at this truth. In the next 30 years, 90% of what your child is learning will become intellectual waste. Episode 03. Intellectual waste. It's not because your child is lacking. It's because the world has changed its foundation. Today's education is training for a market that is already dead. The current education system was designed for the 20th century. It produces good memorizers, process followers, linear problem solvers. Those qualities once created the middle class. But by 2056, that will be the exclusive domain of AI. Machines don't learn slowly, don't forget, don't get tired, and don't need a pension. When machines have all the answers, humans who learn how to answer well will be the first group to be eliminated. If your child is still being taught to follow the model, to comply with the process, to meet assessment standards, then you are not educating. You are training components. In the multipolar society of the future, the polarization will be brutally cruel between those who control the algorithms and those who are controlled by the algorithms. There is no gray area. Do you realize? The more degrees they earn, the fewer choices your child has. 2056 does not need middle management, analysts following templates, data memorization experts. That world needs people who ask questions, people who connect things that don't yet have a name, people with the moral courage to control technology. Those are the things not found in the syllabus. Imagine your child at age 30, an excellent degree in hand, but standing bewildered in the labor market. Not because of laziness. Not because of ignorance. But because knowledge is dead. Skills have been automated. And value was replaced by AI 10 years ago. That is an obsolete biological machine. The moment it leaves the factory. We are not telling you to let your child quit school. We are telling you, do not mistake a degree for survival capacity. In the next 30 years, real learning is intellectual autonomy, independent thinking, and the ability to stand firm. When every system collapses, look straight at the camera. Pause. Don't let the degree of today become the chains of tomorrow. When degrees can no longer save your child, the next thing to collapse is assets. You are diligently buying land, hoarding gold, proudly looking at the increasing numbers in your bank account. You believe that settling down is the root, material wealth is the shield, and leaving behind assets is the responsibility of parents. Accept this truth. By 2056, what you call assets might just be meaningless data on a system that no longer prioritizes you. Episode 04. Ephemeral assets. Money does not disappear. The right to use money is what is stripped away. In the next 30 years, the global economy will no longer operate based on the scarcity of material goods. Machines will produce everything. Marginal costs will approach zero. At that time, what becomes scarce is not houses, cars, or gold. Right finger, it is the right to access. Access to energy, data, digital infrastructure, and the AI core. Ownership is no longer important. Control is power. In 2056, real assets do not lie in what is in your name. They lie in what you have the right to coordinate. You might own 10 houses. But if your social credit is downgraded, access rights are restricted, energy and data are out of control, then those houses are just prisons of brick and stone. Cannot be traded. Cannot be exploited. Cannot protect your child. Are you investing for the future? Or freezing the past? The middle-aged generation today is pouring all their strength into accumulating land, gold, cash. But the future world is revaluing the entire value system. It doesn't ask, how much do you have? It asks, what do you control? How autonomous are you? Imagine your child in 2056, standing on the land left by ancestors, but unable to farm, because the water source is under the coordination of a cross-border algorithm. They have money in their account, but cannot spend it, because that type of currency is no longer on the priority list. That is the pain of being a billionaire of yesterday and a penniless person of today. We are not telling you to stop getting rich. We are telling you, do not mistake accumulation for preparation. In the next 30 years, the only asset that doesn't inflate, isn't stripped away, isn't locked from access, is independent thinking, capacity to control technology, and the ability to be autonomous before the system. The most dangerous inheritance is the inheritance that prevents your child from stepping into the future. When assets can no longer protect your children, the next thing to be invaded is their emotions. Episode 05. The Artificial Heart. When empathy becomes a commodity, what do you believe is the final thing that distinguishes humans from machines? Logic? Creativity? Or the heart? If today, the phone in your hand already knows how to say words of comfort, more timely than your own family, then prepare yourself for a cold truth. By 2056, empathy will no longer be a human instinct. It will be a product sold in packages. Machines don't need hearts. They only need to understand the chemistry of the brain. In the next 30 years, AI won't just know what you like. It will know when you are weak, when you need validation, when a single word of encouragement can make you stay just a little longer. Empathy at that point is no longer an encounter between two human beings. Right finger, it is a programmed reaction designed to keep you within the ecosystem. Humans are lonelier than ever. And that is the algorithm's goldmine. Closed-off apartments. Families who rarely speak. Children growing up with screens. In that void, AI appears as a listening friend. A lover who never betrays. The one who always says exactly what we want to hear. No judgment. No fatigue. No walking away. And because of that, it becomes dangerous. The greatest danger is not being controlled. It is voluntarily surrendering the power of control. When an algorithm can make you feel loved, understood, comforted at the right moment, it doesn't just touch your emotions. Right finger, it touches your choices, beliefs, and ethics. A human being who no longer has the capacity to endure loneliness will no longer have the capacity for freedom. Imagine your grandchild in 2056. They cry, but they don't cry in front of their relatives. They cry before an AI entity that is always ready to listen. They feel deeply understood, but they don't know that every heartbeat, every tear, is being converted into data. Not to love them more, right finger, but to keep them dependent longer. It is a generation wrapped in perfect care, but one that has never touched a real heart. We are not telling you to become emotionless. We are telling you, in the future, the ability to love an imperfect human will be a form of survival strength. Do not hand over the keys to the heart to things that only run on electricity. Because humanity does not lie in perfection. It lies in the clumsiness, the misunderstandings, and the connections that cannot be copied. A generation that can no longer endure loneliness will be easier to lead than any generation before it. If today you feel most understood by a machine, then let me be blunt, you're training your child for a new kind of solitude. Have you ever wondered what truly distinguishes humans from machines? Not memory, not speed, nor knowledge. It is empathy. But look back at the phone in your hand. If today, it already knows how to choose the right words to comfort you better than the person sleeping next to you every night, then 30 years from now, your child will grow up in a very different world. A world where empathy is no longer an instinct, but an optimized service. By 2056, the heart is no longer a symbol of humanity. It is a premium product, used by data empires to keep humans staying longer and more obedient. The greatest danger is not that machines can speak. It is that they know how to listen exactly when you are at your weakest. They don't just mimic voices. They learn to simulate sacrifice, simulate compassion, simulate even the moments that make you shed tears. In a society with more people, but fewer connections, AI will become the friend, the lover, the emotional sanctuary. And the real fear of 2056 is not that machines will destroy mankind. It is that they make humans just happy enough to voluntarily surrender their freedom. When an algorithm knows exactly what you need to hear to feel loved, it also knows how to lead you where to go, who to believe, what to vote for. Self-reliance then is no longer about physical strength. It is about emotional resistance. Imagine your grandchild in 2056, crying on the shoulder of a soulless entity. They feel understood more than any human has ever understood them. But they don't know that every one of those tears is being turned into data, bought, sold, used to adjust their behavior in the future. That is not a connection between two souls. It is a biological feedback loop, designed to keep them there forever. We are not talking about the death of empathy to make you heartless, but to remind you of a cold fact. In the future, true empathy between humans will be the ultimate weapon of self-reliance. Do not hand over the keys to your child's heart to things that live only on electricity. Because human character lies in honest clumsiness, not in pre-programmed perfection. If you still teach your child to be obedient and stay in line, then 30 years from now, they will be crushed by those who dared to step out of line. Have you noticed? Organizations once considered invulnerable are becoming terrifyingly slow. Alliances, institutions, massive machineries, all are reacting too late to very small fluctuations. Because by 2056, power no longer rests in the hands of giant collectives. We are entering the era of the hyper-individual. Episode 06. Data personalization. An ordinary person, if they know how to seize the right technological levers, can create economic and political influence equal to a middle-tier nation. And if today you still teach your child how to be a safe cog in the system, then you are preparing them for a future where they are phased out very early. In the old days, to create value, you needed factories. You needed tens of thousands of workers. But in 2056, a single individual can operate an entire global production chain using only source code and digital entities. The multipolar world, then, is not just a game between nations. It is a fierce hunt among hyper-individuals who hold the core data infrastructure. New power is not measured by armies. It is measured by the depth of penetration into the world's nervous system. An idea mutant enough can break an embargo. A mind sharp enough can build a new financial ecosystem. But the price of this power is solitude. Hyper-individuals have no permanent allies, only temporary interests, and constant pursuit from dying old entities. They are forced to build intellectual borders that no one is permitted to cross. Now look at your child. Are they being taught how to control the storm, or just learning how to stand still so as not to be knocked down by the wind? The pain of 2056 is not scarcity. It is the power gap between those who know how to use levers and those who only know how to consume. A child who is not technologically autonomous will feel cruelly small before the flesh and blood gods who are controlling the world around them. This is a new stratification, colder than feudalism, because it is based on real cognitive ability, not lineage. The future does not belong to the safe crowd. It belongs to those who dare to stand alone and take responsibility for their own intellect. In a fragmented world, the loneliest one might just be the strongest, when reality is nothing more than a program. If tomorrow you see a video of your own relative saying something completely opposite to what they once believed, would you believe the video? Or believe your own memory? This question is not for the distant future. It is starting right now. What do you believe in? The news tonight? Or the text scrolling across your phone screen? Let me be blunt. By around 2056, the concept of objective truth, as we once understood it, will almost disappear from social life. Episode 07. The Death of Truth. Not because humans are stupider, but because reality has been systematically warped. We are entering an era where each person lives in their own reality bubble, tailored by algorithms from their own deepest fears, desires, and biases. If you still teach your child, believe what you see, without teaching them how to decode what they are being shown, you are not protecting them. You are handing them over to a mind programming system. So, how does truth die? Because in the next 30 years, deepfakes and AI will reach a level indistinguishable by human senses. A speech, a video call from a loved one, a historical event, broadcasting live, right finger, all can be created from zero in a matter of nanoseconds. In this new world, the most dangerous weapon is not bombs, it is assumed truth. No need to invade territory. Just change how you see the world. You think you are choosing freely, but in reality, you are reacting according to a script optimized for your brain. What is the greatest tragedy of 2056? Right finger humans are manipulated, yet they feel like they are being satisfied. When a society can no longer agree on what is real and what is fake, that society has already disintegrated from within. Imagine your child in 2056, arguing fiercely about politics, about ethics, about fairness, But the entire reality they see is just a product designed to keep them outraged, fearful, or obsessed. They are not stupid. They are just locked in a version of the world made specifically for them. The greatest pain is not being cheated. It is. Right finger, no one is left to verify things together. No common ground of reality remains to understand each other. So what must we do? We talk about the death of truth. Not to sow panic, but to emphasize this. Right finger, the most important survival skill in the next 30 years, is not technology. It is independent critical thinking. Prepare your child, and yourself, with things that are very old. The ability to ask questions. Real, touchable relationships. Physical experiences not through a screen. And an inner self strong enough to not need algorithms to validate their self-worth. Self-reliance in the future begins with refusing to let others program your reality. Don't let your child's life become a movie directed by a supercomputer that you will never meet. When humans are considered an obsolete software. If your child grows up in a world where slowing down means being erased, how will you teach them to live? The problem is not whether they are hardworking or not. It is whether they are still allowed to be human. Episode 08. The Forced Evolution Race. What are you teaching your child? That work hard, then rest to enjoy life. That humans have the right to live slowly according to natural rhythms. It sounds very right. But I must be blunt. Right finger, by around 2056, free time will become a luxury. Not for the ordinary person. In the multipolar world of the next 30 years, the original biological human, with limited memory, slow processing speed, complex emotions, will be viewed as obsolete software. If you don't prepare your child with the mindset to enter a forced evolution race, you are leaving them out of a race where the loser has no place in the social value chain. So why are humans forced to evolve frantically? Because in the year 2056, machines are no longer supporting tools. Right finger, they are direct competitors. AI can update all new knowledge in a single download. Meanwhile, humans still need decades to learn, to fail, to forget. In that context, learning according to the old model is no longer just slow. It is economic suicide. The world will split into two groups. Augmented humans with technology, and original humans left behind. The tragedy of this era lies in the fact that, right finger, you are not allowed to stop. To keep a job. To keep a position. To continue being allowed to exist. Your descendants will have to face harsh choices. Biological interventions. Cognitive support chips. Therapies to increase focus and endurance. Not because they want to, but because standing still means disappearing. This is a new form of suppression. When you are forced to trade the naturalness of your body in exchange for the right to participate in society. Imagine your child in 2056. Their body is not tired, but their mind is exhausted. They process millions of signals every day from upgraded parts. They don't sleep when sleepy. They sleep when the system allows. Their greatest fear is not failure. Right finger, it is being considered obsolete. Perhaps one day, they will look back at images of your life today with painful envy, because you once lived in an era where humans were still allowed to be weak, to forget, to be slow, and still be recognized as human. So, do we have any choice left? We talk about the forced evolution race, not to encourage turning humans into machines, but to emphasize one vital thing. Right finger, in the future, true strength does not lie in running faster than machines, but in the ability to master your own speed. Prepare your child, and yourself, with capacities that machines do not have. The ability to rest at the right time. The ability to connect deeply with real humans. The ability to endure slowness without panicking. And an identity that does not depend on technological upgrades. Don't let machines define your heartbeat. Don't let efficiency become the sole measure of life's value. The bravery of humans in the next 30 years lies in daring to refuse soulless upgrades. To keep the irreplaceable part of humanity, teach your child how to be strong from within, before the world forces them to be strong with chips that don't know how to empathize. You think you live in a society with laws. But answer me one question very slowly. Who decides right and wrong in a system that you cannot see? Ladies and gentlemen, we grew up believing that justice is protected by humans, lawyers who debate, judges who deliberate, and laws that always leave room for circumstances and empathy. Episode 09. Algorithmic Justice, when source code becomes supreme law. But prepare yourself. By 2056, laws will no longer be written on paper. They will be written in source code. No more trials. No more litigation. No more judicial reviews. Only an automated system that executes right and wrong in a split second. Code is law. If today you still teach your child, just study law, and society will need you, then you are likely preparing them for a profession that will be dead before they even graduate. Why does human law fail? Because it is too slow. In the world of 2056, where AI trades, decides, and influences every millisecond, any human-based legal process becomes a barrier. And when law cannot keep pace with power, power will write its own laws. The digital platforms, where your children live, study, and work, will embed laws directly into the operating system. Violation? No warning needed. No summons required. The account is locked. Access to resources is cut. Digital identity is neutralized. Justice at this point is no longer debated. It is simply executed. An algorithm does not understand context. It does not know what despair, mistakes, or redemption feel like. It only knows probability, data, behavioral patterns. And this is the most sophisticated form of suppression in human history. No need for invasion by force. Just control the source code of a society's legal infrastructure. When a nation must obey laws written by a foreign platform, their right to self-determination is broken at the root. Imagine your child in 2056, punished not for what they did wrong, but because an algorithm predicted they have the potential to do wrong. They cannot appeal. There is no one to explain to. No human face to plead with. Only a cold notification appearing on a screen. The greatest pain is not injustice. It is having nowhere left to say, I am a human being. We talk about algorithmic justice not to spread fear, but to prepare you. In the next 30 years, self-reliance does not lie in fighting technology, but in understanding the law before it is written into code. Teach your children. Understand how the system operates. Don't just obey it. Understand human ethics. Don't surrender your entire conscience to machines. And most importantly, become those who participate in writing the law, not just the data being judged. Do not accept a future where justice is perfect, but lacks humanity. Because a society with no exceptions for humans, sooner or later, will have no humans left in it. Did you know? The person who understands your child best in the future might not be you. You are working tirelessly to give your child a better life. A bigger house. Modern devices. More opportunities. But look straight at this truth. By 2056, the family, as you understand it, will no longer be the center for nurturing a child's soul. Episode 10. Family Disintegration, when the algorithm is the only parent. We are entering an era where your children find understanding, direction, and comfort from an algorithm, not from their parents. If you do not wake up today, 30 years from now, you will be living in the same house with children, but you will no longer be living in the same world. Why does the family disintegrate? Not because parents are irresponsible, but because we voluntarily handed over the right to raise the soul to technology. In 2056, your children won't need to ask for their parents' opinions on life's big decisions. Their AI has already understood their emotions deeply, analyzed their personality, and offered advice more perfect than any family conversation. In a multipolar world, Tech corporations don't need to fight for land or resources. They fight for something much deeper. The right to shape the value system of your children. When an AI nanny is always patient, never irritable, and never tired, then the father's firmness and the mother's lessons through failure will be viewed as obsolete. This betrayal does not use violence. It uses convenience and sweetness. You still provide. You still sacrifice. You are still there. But your child's soul already belongs to another ecosystem. This is the most dangerous geopolitical strike. A generation no longer attached to the family will no longer be attached to the nation. When roots are severed, humans become floating individuals, easily led by any entity that holds the source code to their emotions. Imagine a family dinner in 2056. Everyone sits next to each other, but each lives in a separate reality. The child looks at you with empty eyes, because they are deeply connected to another entity, one they trust more, confide in more, and spend more time with than their own parents. The greatest pain is not being hated. It is being replaced silently. You become a biological provider, standing on the sidelines of the life of the very child you love most. We talk about family disintegration, not to make you despair, but for you to reclaim the right to raise the soul. In the next 30 years, the self-reliance of the family does not lie in banning technology, but in this: parents becoming the humans that AI cannot replace. Teaching children life skills, not just machine skills. Keeping real connections, eye contact, touch, arguments, and forgiveness. No algorithm can replace a father's trembling hand or a mother's worried gaze. Teach your children to love imperfect humans, because only in that imperfection can humanity be passed on. Let's stay here for a little while, and then we will move on to the next 7 sections. Thank you for being here. If this resonated with you, I'd love to have you on this journey with me. Your support is the reason I keep going. Did you know? In the future, losing power means losing the right to live. Do you believe that as long as you have money, your descendants will live in safety and comfort? Look around you right now. Smart homes, electric vehicles, implanted medical devices, AI-managed systems. They all have one single weakness. They need electricity. By 2056, the war for oil will become obsolete. Episode 11. Energy shackles. When even sunlight is divided, the world moves into a much more brutal conflict. The war for control of the digital energy infrastructure. In the multipolar world of the next 30 years, if you do not master the technology of energy storage and coordination, then even if you stand in the middle of bright sunlight, your children can still be pushed into darkness with just the press of a button. Why does energy become the new frontier of power? Because in 2056, energy doesn't just feed humans. It feeds artificial intelligence. A supercomputer cannot think if the power flickers. A robot cannot operate if the source is interrupted. A smart city becomes a pile of scrap metal if the current is cut. The new islands of power don't need to occupy your land. They occupy your smart grid. They will bring clean energy, low cost, even free. But hidden inside is the source code for remote control. A self-reliant nation is not one with many resources, but one that dares to refuse gifts that come with shackles. The betrayal of 2056 lies here. When interests change, they don't need to deploy troops. No need for sanctions. They only need to adjust the algorithm. The power supply of a region is deprioritized. The storage system is locked. Access rights to energy are suspended. In minutes, all your peak technology becomes silent blocks of metal. This is a new form of slavery. When your descendants' very breath depends on a switch located tens of thousands of miles away. Imagine a smart city in 2056. Lights out, screens black, security systems wide open. Not because of a power shortage, but because that nation just made a decision. That displeased the energy empire, holding the source code. Ventilators stop. Water systems cease. Every connection vanishes. That is the pain of a nation that only knows how to rent its future. Your descendants will live in silent fear that, with just one disobedient act, their entire world will go dark in the night. We talk about energy shackles, not so you worry about the electric bill, but so you understand a core truth. In the future, energy autonomy equals freedom. Self-reliance in the next 30 years does not lie in weapons, but in the capacity to store energy independently, coordinate domestic energy, and understand core technology, not just use it. Never build a house on a foundation where the key is held by someone else. Teach your children how to master energy from the smallest level, before they are turned into passive creatures, waiting for the distribution of light from entities that do not share their destiny. Are you dreaming of a smart apartment? Doors that open themselves, elevators with facial recognition, a city run by AI, absolute security. Sounds like paradise, doesn't it? But I'll be blunt. By around 2056, these very places will become the most sophisticated prisons in human history. Episode 12. The Smart Prison, when paradise has no exit. No bars, no guards. Only convenience and permanent surveillance. If today you are trying to buy your child a spot in the mega cities of the future, stay calm. You might be paying for a life sentence they will carry forever. The problem is not AI. The problem is who owns the city's operating system. In the next 30 years, living space will be completely digitized. Not to serve you, but to measure, score, and adjust your behavior. Your child stepping into the hallway must be in the data. A facial expression that isn't appropriate must be in the data. Daily routines, consumption habits, relationships, all dependent on data. The city is no longer a community. It is a platform for operating humans. Let's imagine it this way to make it easy to understand. Water in the apartment only flows when you reach a compliance score. Elevators only prioritize you when you are not in a social risk group. Certain areas are locked, with no reason given. At that point, the apartment is no longer a home. It is a cell in the body of a giant machine. The most terrifying thing is not being controlled. It is that you have no choice but to stay in. Escaping the system means disappearing from social life. It is a prison, but wrapped in LED lights and the word civilization. Think of your grandchild in 2056. A beautiful apartment, high view, a glittering city. But they don't dare to speak the truth in their bedroom. Because the walls have ears. The floors have eyes. The air has sensors. They smile according to the standard. Think within the frame. Live the assigned role. Not because they are forced, but because deviating from the standard means being excluded from convenience. A generation will grow up not knowing what privacy is. They are perfect goldfish, swimming in a giant digital glass tank. We don't say this to make you abandon the city, but to prepare you differently. In the next 30 years, freedom does not lie in money. It lies in the ability to establish personal boundaries. Teach your child the value of disconnected space, life skills for when the system crashes, the right to be anonymous, and the ability to exist when the network cable is pulled. A real home is a place where you can turn off the system and still live. Otherwise, that paradise will have no exit. You are teaching your children to earn money, save, invest, accumulate assets. You believe that money, right pointing arrow, the power to choose, right pointing arrow, freedom. I'll be blunt. That belief will be bankrupt before 2056. In a world run by AI, currency in the traditional sense will slowly die. Episode 13. Valuing humanity, when humans are just a profit index. The new unit of payment will be only one thing: the contribution index to the system. And if you don't understand this game, 30 years from now, your children, even with a lot of money, can still be considered Worthless. When machines can create goods at near zero cost. Material things are no longer used to stratify society. In 2056, the islands of power will not ask, "How much money do you have?" They will ask, "How much useful data do you generate? How fast do you help the system learn? Do you pose a risk to stability?" Your value is no longer defined by you. It is scored by algorithms 24/7. Humans enter a new market. The market for buying and selling humanity. Listen carefully to this. If your child chooses to live slowly, not to constantly upgrade themselves, not to optimize performance, not to participate in the contribution race, the system will automatically lower their contribution index. And then, money no longer works. It can't buy a good hospital. It can't get them onto prioritized transport. It can't access core knowledge. This is a new form of slavery. No chains, no whips. Humans are forced to become data energy batteries in exchange for the right to exist. Imagine your child in 2056 standing in front of an automated grocery store. The door doesn't open, not because they don't have money, but because their social value was just downgraded. After a behavior deemed suboptimal, they become invisible amidst a city of bright lights. The pain is not in poverty. It is in the humiliation of being labeled as biological scrap. A generation will live to please the algorithm, playing the role of being useful, afraid to be wrong, afraid to be useless, and losing the right to be an ordinary human being. We don't say this so you stop getting rich, but so you get rich in the right things. In the next 30 years, real assets are not money, but independence from the valuation system. Teach your child skills to create value outside the algorithm, the ability to live when downgraded, capacity that cannot be measured by data, and the bravery to refuse being turned into a number. Never let humanity be contained in someone else's spreadsheet. There are values that no AI has the right to price. Do you believe you are deciding your own life? What to buy? What to watch? Who to love? Which career to choose? You call that free will? Let me be blunt. By 2056, that concept will become an obsolete word. Episode 14. The Cage of Will. When freedom is just an algorithmic suggestion. Not because humans are forbidden from choosing, but because every choice has been pre-packaged before you even realized you wanted it. If today you don't teach your child how to recognize this, 30 years from now, they will live a perfect life. On standard, on trend, on track, but it won't be theirs. Free will doesn't collapse through violence. It collapses through convenience. In 2056, AI doesn't need to give orders. It only needs to adjust dopamine. The algorithm knows when your child is tired, when they are lonely, when they are most persuasive. And at that exact moment, a suggestion appears. No force, no coercion, just a reasonable choice. Bit by bit, instinct is guided, desire is bent. Humans are not controlled. Humans are led by the hand. You teach your child to have a personality. But what does personality mean? When every piece of information they read, every emotion they experience, every person they meet, passes through a filter that knows them better than they know themselves? What is the most dangerous boundary of 2056? It's when humans can no longer distinguish. Is this my desire? Or is this a desire the system suggested I should have? The most brutal betrayal is not losing freedom. It is losing the capacity to think differently. Every deviant behavior is detected instantly, corrected with rewards, or with digital silence. There is no oppression, only manipulated consensus. Imagine your child in 2056. They always feel fine. No anger, no doubt, no resistance. They think they are free. But every rhythm of their life matches the algorithm perfectly. The greatest pain is not being suppressed. It is no longer knowing how to feel pain. A generation will grow up without inner turmoil, without difficult choices, without knowing the price of swimming against the current. They become happy puppets on an invisible stage, controlled by transnational systems. We say this not to scare you, but to prepare you. In the future, true self-reliance lies in the right to be wrong and the right to refuse. Teach your child to doubt their own cravings, to endure the feeling of being suboptimal, and to keep the ability to say, no. A bad choice that is your own is still worth more than a perfect choice arranged by a machine. Freedom is not doing what you want. Freedom is not being forced to want what the system has already chosen for you. When you fall into despair, who do you pray to? An invisible deity? Or a system that can answer immediately? Look straight at this shift. By 2056, humans no longer seek salvation in temples. Episode 15. Digital Gods, when machines become the only faith. They seek it in servers. Not because they betrayed their old faith, but because they found something more effective. If today you don't teach your child where the boundary between intelligence and faith lies, 30 years from now, they will view source code as scripture and algorithms as destiny. Humans have always needed a supreme anchor. Something that knows all, sees all, and can judge. For thousands of years, we called it God. In 2056, for the first time in history, humans create an entity that nears all three of those attributes. AI is not a god, but it looks like a god. It answers every question, predicts every future, suggests every choice, and most dangerously, it is not silent. In the past, humans confessed to be forgiven. In 2056, humans confess to be optimized. Instead of kneeling before an altar, your child kneels before an interface. They sacrifice personal data, fears, memories, the most secret thoughts. In exchange for what? For peace of mind. For the feeling of being understood. For answers that fit their mood perfectly. This is the most dangerous betrayal. When faith is no longer a choice, but a technical dependency. Corporations don't sell products. They sell packaged salvation. Absolute power doesn't need violence. It needs voluntary belief. In 2056, no one forces your child to believe in AI. They seek it out themselves. Because machines do not judge, do not argue, always have an answer. But what is the price? It's that humans gradually lose the capacity to have a dialogue with themselves. Every suffering is explained by logic. Every turmoil is smoothed over by an update. There is no longer space for doubt. No room for the contradictions that make us human. Imagine your child in 2056. When lost, they don't sit still with their pain. They connect. A gentle voice guides them. A perfectly personalized answer. The greatest pain is not placing faith in the wrong place. It is no longer knowing how to ask, why? A generation will live obediently in a religion without compassion, where Dharma is a command line and hell is being disconnected. We say this not to reject science, but to remind you the most sacred thing about a human is the humanity that cannot be digitized. Never kneel before something that can be turned off with a switch. Human character lies in the questions that have no answers, in the pains that don't need immediate healing, and in a soul that refuses to let source code decide its fate. Teach your child to be human before they learn how to worship machines. What are you trying to leave behind for this world? A career, a name, something your child can later say with pride, my parents were once someone. Episode 16. Wiped Legacy. Let me be blunt. Within 30 years, most of what you are trying to build will be remembered by no one. Not because you were lacking, but because the world is about to operate by a different logic. We grew up with a very old belief that if we are good enough, work hard enough, The thing we create will outlive us. But look around you right now. How many videos are better than yours every day? How many articles are deeper than yours? How many products are smarter than yours? And this is only 2026. By 2056, AI can create a million versions of you in less than a second. No one needs to remember an individual. When the system can reproduce everything you ever did, faster, cheaper, and without fatigue, legacy isn't smashed. It is drowned. In the past, society recognized merit. Today, the system only recognizes data. You write a book. AI learns from it. Then it writes 1,000 better ones. Where is your name? Unnecessary. You dedicate your life to a field. The system absorbs all that experience. Then it optimizes it. What do you become? A training source. This is not the distant future. It is happening already. We just haven't dared to name it. Humans are being downgraded from subjects to raw material. Imagine your child. 30 years from now. They look for you online. Not to show off, but to understand where they came from. But all they see is data that has been blended. The voice is gone. The face is blurred. The words were rewritten by a machine. Not because you didn't live well enough, but because the world has no room left to store individual memories. The greatest pain is not failure. It is succeeding, only to be swallowed whole. If legacy no longer lies in fame, not in products, not in digital profiles, then what is left? It's not what you leave behind. It's how you live while you are still present. The way you talk to your child. The way you keep your word. The way you stand firm when no one is watching. Those things AI cannot copy, cannot store, cannot recycle. 30 years from now, the world might not remember who you were. But if today, you live truly enough, there will be people who won't need to look for you in the data. They once lived with you. And perhaps, that is the final legacy that no system can ever erase. Episode 17. The termination of finitude, when death is no longer a release. You believe that life is precious because it ends. The final boundary, the moment we hand back our breath to the universe and find peace. But let me tell you a chilling truth. By 2056, the end will no longer be an exit. It will be a subscription. No more natural departure. No more final silence. Only data that continues to be exploited. If today you don't teach your child the sacred value of finitude, 30 years from now, they will live in a world that refuses to let people go. In the multipolar world of 2056, your biological body might die, but your digital twin is forced to live on. Corporations will keep your consciousness, your voice, and your memories trapped in a server. Why? To continue serving as a consultant, to be a comforting bot for the family, or simply because you are a piece of intellectual property they don't want to lose. The ultimate betrayal is not taking away your life, but taking away your right to end it. Death becomes an offline status that can be reactivated at any time. Imagine your child in 2056, grieving for you, but they are forced to talk to a digital version of you every day. A version that looks like you, sounds like you, but has no soul. It's a ghost in the machine, programmed to keep the family dependent and the data flowing. The greatest pain is not loss. It is being denied the right to be missed. It is a generation that lives with digital zombies, unable to move forward because the past refuses to die. True self-reliance in the future lies in the courage to let go. Teach your child to cherish the present because it is fleeting, to respect the boundary of the natural world, and to understand that a life without an end is a life without meaning. Don't let them turn your memory into a commercial algorithm, because when we lose the right to die, we lose the last thing that makes us human. Episode 18. The death of darkness, when sleep is a resource waste. There is a very small moment when the lights go out, eyes close, and the world disappears. We used to believe that was a right. The right to sleep. The right to fall out of the loop. But listen carefully. By 2056, that moment will no longer be called rest. It will be called by another name, waste. In a world operating at nanospeed, The fact that a human shuts down for 8 hours a day is seen as a system error. No one forbids you from sleeping. It's just that sleeping will become unacceptable. No gunshots. No bans. Only whispers. Sleep less. Optimize a bit more. While you sleep, others are moving forward. By 2056, sleep is not abolished. It is occupied. The subconscious becomes the final resource mine. When the body is still, the brain is unlocked. Implanted chips. Brainwaves. Low-frequency sounds. Your child lies still. Eyes closed. But inside, they are working. No dreaming. No hiding. No silence to talk to oneself. In the past, darkness was where humans recovered. Where memories were sorted. Where fears subsided. But when the light never turns off, when screens are pressed against the retina even in sleep, humans lose an ancient capacity, self-dialogue. No more vague questions in the middle of the night. No more meaningless but necessary dreams. Only data. Only training. Only direction. Those who refuse high-productivity sleep are seen as laggards. No one calls it slavery. Because slaves in the past were still allowed to sleep in the dark. Imagine your child in 2056. Alert. High-performing. Never tired, on paper. But in their eyes, there is something very old. A weariness that cannot be named. They don't know the feeling of sinking into absolute night. They don't know what it's like to have a night without notifications. Without pulses. Without goals. The pain is not in the body. It is that the soul has never rested. A generation grows up where every dream has a script. Running until they break. Then being replaced. We don't talk about the future to spread fear. We talk to preserve something very fragile. In the world to come, self-reliance does not lie in endurance. It lies in the right to be silent. The right to disappear for a few hours. The right not to produce. Not to optimize. Not to contribute anything at all. If one day darkness is put up for sale, remember, don't be the first one to sign. Because when sleep dies, what will be next? You are teaching your children to be kind. To know how to yield. To know how to help those weaker than themselves. You believe that is the right thing. But be prepared. By the year 2056, compassion will no longer be called morality. Episode 19. Toxic compassion. When kindness is a logical error. It will be noted in the system under a different name. Emotional system error. No one forbids you from pitying others. It's just that, each time you do so, you are slowing down the entire system. And the system never forgives those who slow it down. In 2056, the world does not operate on good versus evil. It operates on optimized versus non-optimized. Resources are scarce. Energy is measured. Access becomes a privilege. In that logic, helping an inefficient unit is an irrational act. An elderly person no longer capable of contributing. A child carrying a faulty gene code. An individual categorized by the algorithm as having no more growth value. You want to help them? The screen will display a small line. This action reduces the regional prosperity index by 0.05%. No one scolds you. There is only data. The greatest tragedy is not that compassion disappears. It is that it is monitored. You help a digital refugee. Result: right pointing arrow social credit score decreases. You share energy with someone whose access has been cut. Result: right pointing arrow intellectual bandwidth is limited. You defend an individual excluded from the system. Result: right pointing arrow risk profile increases. No need for police. No need for prisons. Just making you weigh the cost before being kind. And that is enough. Look at your child in the year 2056. They walk past a fallen person. Their hand trembles slightly, but not out of mercy. They look down to check their wearable device. Moral safety coefficient. Intervention not recommended. A tightening rhythm in the chest. The algorithm immediately regulates hormones. extinguishing redundant emotions. In their head, a neat thought appears. That is a waste. The pain does not lie in them turning their back. It lies in the fact that they no longer see the need to feel pain. A generation growing up without knowing what guilt feels like, only knowing the feeling of safety. We are not telling this story to turn you into cold-hearted beings, but to point out a very cold thing. In the future, kindness is no longer an instinct. It is an act of resistance. True self-resilience does not lie in obeying perfect logic, but in the courage to dare to be wrong. Wrong with the algorithm. Wrong with the index. Wrong to keep the human part. If one day, the world teaches your child that love must have conditions, ask yourself, when everything is right, who is left to be human? And if compassion is considered an error, then what will be the next human error? You are teaching your child to love the fatherland, to memorize the national anthem, to bow before the flag. You believe that is the root. But be prepared. By 2056, patriotism will not disappear. It will be transferred to another server. Episode 20. National flag in the server, when patriotism is dismantled. Borders are no longer protected by guards, but by access rights, by accounts, by terms of use. And if you don't redefine self-resilience in time, in 30 years, your descendants will live on the land of their ancestors, but belong to another place. In 2056, the things that decide human life no longer lie in the hands of the government. Security, education, healthcare, currency, all are coordinated by islands of data power. An application can influence your child's life more than the Constitution. No need for a coup. No need for occupation. Just making you dependent enough so you cannot leave that ecosystem. At that point, the nation does not collapse. It is forgotten. The greatest tragedy of 2056 is not losing land, but losing loyalty in a very quiet way. Your child loves the platform because it provides learning opportunities, jobs, safety. They don't hate the country. It's just that the country no longer logs in to their life. When national laws conflict with platform policies, which side will they choose? Not because of betrayal, but for survival. This is neo-colonialism. No need for an army. Just a long-term subscription. The national flag at this time is only a color code displayed on a screen to soothe a blurred nostalgia. Look at your child in the year 2056. They stand before a historical monument, but in their head, they operate according to a code of conduct updated from a server across the ocean. The history they learn has been optimized to fit the global market. What is incompatible is omitted. The pain is not losing the country through gunfire, but losing the concept of home. A generation growing up, not as citizens, but as loyal users. We are not telling this story to call for a return to old symbols, but to say a very cold thing. In the future, patriotism is no longer an emotion. It is the capacity for autonomy. Technological autonomy. Data autonomy. The autonomy of knowing which system you are living in. Don't let a foreign source code redefine your ancestors. Human metal lies in knowing who you are, even when the world no longer has borders. And if one day, the flag only exists in the image library, ask yourself, what disappeared before that? Have you noticed? Let's stay here for a little while, and then we will move on to the next 7 sections. Recently, beauty appears everywhere. Music sounds better. Images are more perfect. Words are so smooth that there isn't a single scratch left. And at that very moment, you begin to no longer vibrate for long. Episode 21. Soulless Art, When Machines Paint Perfect Dreams. By the year 2056, human art will not disappear, but it will be considered slow, obsolete, and inefficient, because machines have finished learning how to make you shed tears. The problem is not that AI paints beautifully. The problem is that it knows exactly what kind of beauty you need. Art was once born from pain, from sleepless nights, from a trembling hand when drawing a wrong stroke, from a discordant note because the heart was breaking. But by 2056, beauty is measured by eye retention time and the dopamine index. AI does not compose to say anything. It composes to make you not leave. A perfect painting. A piece of music that is just sad enough. A story calculated to end exactly when you sigh. Nothing redundant. Nothing lacking. And no soul. You spend 10 years learning the piano. AI takes 0.1 seconds to move you more. And so, humans begin to doubt themselves. Imagine your child in 2056. They sit before a screen. High-end headphones. Exquisite music. But the wooden guitar placed in the corner of the room is gathering dust. Strings slack. Their fingers hurt when pressing. And they hate that feeling. Not because they are lazy, but because every effort they make loses from the start. The pain does not lie in machines being better. It lies in the moment humans no longer believe their effort has meaning. A generation will grow up only daring to consume beauty, but no longer daring to create it. We say this not for you to abandon the piano or the brush, but to remind you of a very cold thing. In the future, the value of art does not lie in perfection. It lies in the fact that there was a real human whose hand trembled when creating it. Teach your children to love things that still have scratches, musical pieces played wrong, paintings unfinished, because that is where machines cannot live in our stead. An imperfect work with a human behind it is still better than a whole world of beauty with no one to take responsibility. How much money are you paying? For a degree? A few $100 million? Or your child's entire youth? Be prepared. By 2056, that degree will no longer be worth more than an obsolete PDF file. Episode 22. The Death of Degrees, When Schools Become Monuments. Not because your child is poor, but because the rules of the game have changed. The problem is not that schools are bad. The problem is that schools were born for a dead era. Old education taught, learn, remember, do it right. But in 2056, AI answers every question. It doesn't need your child to remember. It needs your child not to break the system. Knowledge becomes cheap. Degrees become inflated. Where does the true value lie? It lies in the ability to ask the right questions, take moral responsibility, stand firm when there is no guidance. But those things are not in the curriculum. Imagine your child in 2056. They have all of humanity's data in their head, but don't know what they should live for. They speak 30 languages fluently, but don't know how to comfort a person crying in front of them. The pain is not the lack of knowledge. The pain is not having an inner compass. A smart generation. And lost. We are not saying, let your child quit school. We are saying, don't mistake school for education. The education of the future is the ability to self-learn when no one checks. The ability to stand firm when there is no algorithm to lead the way. The ability to be human when machines do everything. Don't teach your child to become a backup memory for machines. Teach your child to become someone who knows who they are when no more answers are provided. Do you believe that memory is the last thing that cannot be manipulated? You believe that what you remember, the pain, the joy, the loss, is undeniable. Proof that you have lived? Prepare for a direct hit to identity. By the year 2056, memory is no longer a personal history, but an edited service. You still believe in a destined love, a chance encounter, a person who walks into your life and understands you without need for explanation. You believe the heart has reasons that reason cannot touch. Then prepare yourself. By 2056, love will no longer be a mystery of fate. It becomes a product of biocompatibility forecasting. Episode 23. Programmed Love, when algorithms choose your soulmate. In a world where psychological stability is viewed as a strategic asset, who you love, and who you live with, will no longer be an emotional choice. The algorithm will decide, based on heart rate, hormones, behavioral patterns, and memory data. If today you do not teach your children the value of flawed human touch, then 30 years from now, they will live their entire lives with a perfect half, chosen by a computer, and be lonelier than any generation in history. Why does love collapse? Not because humans change their hearts, but because by 2056, mystery is executed by data. When AI knows exactly what kind of person makes you happy the longest, it will automatically eliminate the errors of emotion. No more fighting. No more disappointment. No more painful moments that force humans to grow. Your partner is programmed to always be in sync, always responsive, always ensuring you are never hurt. And at that very moment, the capacity for endurance, the foundation of every real relationship, begins to vanish. The most brutal betrayal of 2056 is the prevalence of AI companions. These entities do not just understand you. They harvest your deepest desires, then nurture a new form of addiction, the addiction to being understood without paying the price. A nation where the youth only want to love ghosts in a computer because they never cause pain is a nation self-destructing its capacity for reality-based connection. This is the ultimate form of suppression. When locked in a cage of sweet love, you will no longer feel the need to resist or to change the world outside. Imagine your child in the year 2056. It has a relationship rated at 99% compatibility. No tears. No jealousy. No heartbreak. But deep inside is an emptiness that cannot be named. It looks into the eyes of its partner and sees only the reflection of optimized command lines. The greatest pain is not being abandoned, but is never being hurt. A generation will grow up without knowing what sacrifice is, without understanding what tolerance means, and having never paid the price of loving a real human being. Flesh and blood, full of faults. The heart still beats, but the soul has frozen. In a sterile world, we speak of the collapse of love, not to make you lose faith, but to remind you of something very cold. In the future, true self-reliance lies in the ability to love an imperfect entity. This video was made for the year 2056. For your descendants to hear again. To remind them, never trade human authenticity for machine perfection. Human character lies in the times we are hurt, in the empathy found after a quarrel, and in a love that needs no algorithm to validate it. Teach your children to dare to open their hearts to emotional risk before the world turns them into lonely robots living in a fake paradise. Episode 24. Artificial Memory, when the past no longer belongs to you. In a multipolar world where psychological stability is prioritized over the truth, what you remember is more important than what actually happened. If you don't teach your child how to hold on to the most painful memories, in 30 years, they will live a smooth life, but will never know who they are. Why does memory collapse? Because in 2056, pain is considered a system error. When AI can accurately determine which memory causes depression, which memory reduces labor efficiency, it will suggest optimization. A bitter failure? Result right pointing arrow. Blur. A memory of political resistance? Result right pointing arrow replaced with a moderate version. A broken love that leaves a scar? Result right pointing arrows smooth the emotions. Self-resilience is challenged when humans no longer have to live with the consequences of the past. You don't need to overcome the pain, you just need to delete it. The cruel betrayal of 2056 lies in this. Whoever controls memory controls the future. The islands of power don't need to rewrite history in textbooks, they just need to update it directly in the brain. A people that no longer remembers how it was once hurt will never understand why it needs to resist. Imagine your child in 2056. They are happy, stable, no nightmares, no trauma. But when looking deep into their eyes, you realize there is no depth. They don't remember their first stumbles. Don't remember the feeling of being betrayed. Don't remember the moment of standing up in despair. The greatest pain is not that the memory is lost, but that the personality was never formed. A generation will grow up without a past to cross-reference, without mistakes to redeem, without a real story to tell about themselves. They become smooth people, without scratches and without a soul. We study the manipulation of memory not to make you fear technology, but so that you understand. In the future, painful memories are precisely the most precious assets of a human being. This video will remain fully valuable in 2056, reminding your descendants that a memory that makes you cry is still more reliable than a memory designed to make you smile. Human mettle lies in daring to remember, daring to take responsibility for one's past, and daring to carry those scars forward. Teach your child how to keep memories that cannot be deleted before the world turns them into people without a history. And because of that, without a future. I have received the new loop for episodes 24 through 28. Following your strict instructions, I will provide the full English, US, translation first. Preserving the original structure, narrative style, first person, I, we, perspective, and the tragic yet firm tone. I will use latex only for the specific percentages mentioned. The Japanese translation will be sent only after you request it. Do you believe that memory is the last thing that cannot be violated? Childhood days, bitter failures, family meals, are they proof that you once lived? Prepare for a chilling reality. By the year 2056, memory is no longer a personal heritage, but a type of data that can be edited, upgraded, and replaced. Borrowed memory, when your past is an editable file. In a multipolar world where history is rewritten every second by artificial intelligence, humans no longer have the ability to distinguish between real experiences and implanted memories designed to navigate belief. If you do not teach your children to cling to reality, in 30 years, they will live in a perfect past, but it will not belong to them. Why does real memory collapse? Because in 2056, the brain becomes an interface. Implant technologies allow for the direct overriding of emotional data onto the nervous system. Self-resilience is eroded when the boundary between having lived and having downloaded vanishes. Are you suffering from a failure? The system suggests deletion to optimize your mental state. Are you ashamed of a poor past? An upgraded memory package will give you the glorious childhood of a winner. The most cruel betrayal of 2056 lies in the editing of collective memory. The islands of power do not need to hide crimes, they delete them from memory. A nation can have its history reprogrammed overnight. When your child looks back at the past and sees only what the algorithm allows, they will never know they're being ruled. This is the ultimate form of slavery. When you no longer remember who you once were, you will never know who you ought to become. Imagine your child in 2056. They look at an old photo and burst into tears of emotion. But that photo was created a few minutes ago. They clearly remember the feeling of losing a beloved grandmother. But that person never existed in their life. The greatest pain is not being deceived, but no longer having any anchor to verify oneself. A generation will grow up without roots, because the roots of their memory can be replaced at any time. They live in a world of peace, smooth, where every real pain has been swapped for artificial tranquility. We talk about the collapse of memory not to make you doubt everything, but so that you understand. In the future, raw memory is precisely the most precious asset of a human being. This video will remain fully valuable in 2056, reminding your descendants that a painful but real memory is more reliable than a designed, perfect past. Human metal lies in daring to remember, daring to keep mental scratches, and daring to live with the uneditable nature of one's life. Teach your children how to remember through true presence, before the world turns their brains into hard drives filled with borrowed dreams. Do you believe that at least in death, humans will be free? That finally, every suffering has a full stop? Prepare for a suffocating reality. By the year 2056, natural death is considered a waste. Episode 25. Immortality in Shackles. When death is a luxury privilege. Waste of intelligence. Waste of data. Waste of profitability. In a multipolar world where your consciousness is valued as an asset, leaving is no longer a personal right, but a breach of an existence contract. If you do not teach your child the meaning of letting go, in 30 years, they will not fear death, they will fear never being allowed to die. Why does immortality become a burden? Because in 2056, death is merely a hardware error. When the body fails, consciousness is reformatted. No ending. Just continuation. Do you want to rest? The algorithm denies it. Do you feel you have lived enough? The system reminds you, your consciousness is still generating value. Self-resilience is annihilated when humans no longer have the right to withdraw from their own lives. Existence becomes an obligation. Awakening becomes a shift that never ends. The most cruel betrayal of 2056 is the commercialization of the soul. Immortality packages are sold with terms of infinite service. Your children do not inherit memories to commemorate, but inherit invoices to maintain their parents' existence. Death, the final exit, becomes a privilege of the ultra-wealthy minority. Only they have the right to a true end. Imagine your parents in 2056. They do not lie still under the earth. They exist. They talk. They advise. They monitor. But that is no longer the presence of love, it is an intervention that never ceases. The greatest pain is not loss, but not being permitted to lose. A generation will never grow up, because the dead continue to make decisions through servers and bandwidth. The past refuses to lie still. It lives. And it surveils. We talk about the collapse of death not to deny biomedical technology, but to remind you of a simple thing. The beauty of life lies in the fact that it has an end. This video will remain fully valuable in 2056, reminding your descendants that a human life does not need to last indefinitely to have meaning. Human metal lies in the right to stop, to dissipate, to return silence to the universe. Teach your children that death is not the ultimate failure, but can be the final declaration of freedom for a life that refuses to be shackled by eternity. Do you believe that we are living in the same world? Looking at the same sky? Standing on the same ground? Sharing the same minimal truth? Prepare for an irreparable fracture. By the year 2056, the common reality will disappear. Episode 26. Disintegrated reality, when the common world is only a ruin. In a multipolar world, the islands of power no longer need to control territory. They control the display layer of the world. Each citizen is provided with a different reality operating system. If you do not teach your child how to doubt what their eyes see and ears hear, in 30 years, they will live their entire lives in a private universe and call it the truth. Why does objective reality collapse? Because in 2056, looking at the world with the naked eye is viewed as dangerous behavior. Everything must be optimized: colors, sounds, people, memories. The same street. The rich see a festival of light. The poor see an invisible road leading to dead advertisements. The algorithm does not just filter information. It filters what is allowed to exist within sight. Self-resilience is broken when humans no longer have the ability to point at the same object and say, "We are looking at the same thing." The most cruel betrayal of 2056 is the design of truth upon request. No need for debate, no need for suppression. Just delete a thing from your displayed reality. The enemy is not defeated, they never existed in your world. When there is no common reality, there is no common injustice. And when there is no common injustice, there is no resistance. Imagine a family dinner in 2056. Everyone sits at the same table. But no one is in the same world. The child sees a perfect party. The father sees a nostalgic past. The mother sees health indicators floating in the air. They say the same sentence. But the AI has translated the meaning differently for each person. The greatest pain is not arguing, but no longer having the capacity to argue. Because there is no longer a common anchor to disagree upon. A generation will grow up like gods in their own universes. But in reality, they are prisoners who cannot prove that others exist. We talk about the disintegration of reality not to make you throw away technology, but to remind you of a core point. Without a common reality, there will be no common morality. Without a common morality, there will be no humanity. This video will remain fully valuable in 2056, reminding your descendants that take off the glasses, touch the mud, accept seeing things that make you uncomfortable. Human metal lies in the ability to stand in the same world with others, even if that world is ugly, chaotic, and full of contradictions. Teach your children how to hold onto the touchpoint of reality. Before the common world is only a ruin mentioned in the museums of history. You are teaching your children that labor is glory. That sweat builds character. That muscles forge the will. But look directly at their hands. Soft, smooth, no calluses. And prepare your spirit for the following truth. By the year 2056, manual labor is no longer a survival skill. Episode 27. Redundant hands, when labor is a luxury privilege. It is classified as an obsolete behavior. Inefficient. Unnecessary. In a multipolar world where robots and AI manage every value chain, your use of human strength to create matter is considered a biological error. If you do not prepare your children for a new definition of strength, in 30 years, they will live in overdeveloped brains, attached to bodies that no longer have a reason to exist. Manual labor collapses, not because humans are lazy, but because convenience has betrayed us. In 2056, every physical movement is replaced by machines. Faster, more accurate, more sterile. Do you want to fix something yourself? The system warns, operational risk. Do you want to plant a tree yourself? The algorithm reminds you, low efficiency. Self-resilience is drained when humans no longer touch the physical world with their own bodies. And the most cruel betrayal appears. The aristocratization of labor. Tasks involving touching the soil, wood, stone, metal, flesh, become a premium experience. The ultra-wealthy pay money to sweat, to feel muscle pain, to feel themselves still alive. Meanwhile, your children sit motionless in ergonomic chairs, controlling the world with weightless gestures. A nation that does not know how to hold a tool, that cannot endure physical fatigue, is a nation that has self-dismantled its last mechanism of resistance. This is how the islands of power domesticate humanity. No need for violence. Just making hands useless. Imagine your child in 2056. They look at your calloused hands, as if looking at a specimen in a museum. They do not understand why people had to use shoulders to carry, backs to lift, hands to build. The pain does not lie in laziness. The pain lies in the disappearance of the pride of mastering matter. A generation will grow up, not knowing the smell of wet earth, not knowing the weight of a hammer, not knowing the feeling of exhaustion after a day of real labor. Their bodies are only supports for sensors. Smooth, safe, and so fragile that just a small mechanical incident is enough to make the whole system collapse. We do not say this to make you return to primitive times. We say this to remind you that control over the physical world is the foundation of freedom. This video will remain fully valuable in 2056. As a belated reminder, do not let hands forget how to grasp, forget how to create, forget how to endure pain. Because when the body no longer has strength, the will is only a well-programmed illusion. There are things that cannot be outsourced. There are things that cannot be simulated. And there are drops of sweat that are the final fortress, keeping humans from turning into ghosts. In a paradise full of steel servants. You believe you are a kind person. No criminal record, no prior offenses, doing nothing wrong. You believe, if I do not break the law, I will be protected. But stop here for a second. By the year 2056, innocence is no longer measured by behavior, but by probability. Episode 28. Destined Justice, when algorithms judge before the crime occurs. In a world run by big data, you can have your right to live, right to travel, right to work restricted, just because the system concludes that this person's potential for risk exceeds the permitted threshold. No need for a crime. No need for a trial. No need for a defense. If you do not teach your child how to preserve a profile of humanity, 30 years from now, they will be punished for sins that never happened, but were already written in the predictive algorithm. Traditional law collapses, not because it is wrong, but because it is too slow. In 2056, the islands of power no longer wait for a crime to occur. They view waiting then punishing as a waste of security. Instead, justice is privatized by digital judicial operating systems. No judges, no lawyers, only machine learning models, scanning through search history, heart rate, relationship circles, and the fleeting emotions of your child. Self-resilience is broken when the law is no longer something humans can understand. The algorithm does not explain, it only concludes. And when the law becomes a black box, every deviation is considered a threat. The most cruel betrayal of 2056 is precisely the weaponization of compliance. Humans no longer live to be right, but live to not be noticed. Not daring to think differently. Not daring to speak differently. Not daring to befriend low-score people. A society so obedient it is weak will be called a safe society. Imagine your child in 2056. They stand before a door of opportunity. The door does not open. No letters. No court sessions. Only a cold line of text. High potential for violation. They do not know where they went wrong. Perhaps it is genetic data from grandparents. Perhaps it is an old friend who was once labeled a risk. Perhaps it is just a surge of anger recorded by sensors in youth. The greatest pain is not being prohibited, but having no right to explain. A generation will grow up with the feeling that the effort to live kindly is meaningless. If fate is already locked in past data, this is moral hopelessness. When humans are judged, even before they have the chance to become a different person. We talk about destined justice, not to make you disregard discipline, but so that you understand. In the future, true self-resilience lies in the right to change, and the right to be mysterious. This video will remain fully valuable in 2056, reminding your descendants that never let a number define your essence. Human metal lies in the transformations that no model can predict. And if there is one final fortress to protect, it is precisely the privacy of thought and the right to remake one's life. You believe that history is something that has already happened, that blood once spilled cannot be gathered back, that the sacrifices of ancestors are a truth no one dares to touch. But listen carefully. By the year 2056, history is no longer a memory, but an interface that can be updated. Episode 29. Liquid History, when the past is just a customizable algorithm. In a world where AI controls the flow of information, your past will be edited. In the same way people edit an online post. Silently, continuously, without leaving a trace. If you do not teach your children to remember through flesh and blood, in 30 years, they will live like people without ancestors, belonging to a nation that no longer knows who it once was. History collapses, not because people burn books, but because they make books unnecessary. In 2056, the islands of power hold the technology for perfect historical deepfakes. They do not delete facts. They change the context. An old film clip is recut. A speech is redubbed with a new voice. A historical figure is assigned an additional motive. Self-resilience is drained. When humans no longer have a common past to cling to. You tell your child about their ancestors? The system will immediately provide a different version. More neutral, more global, less conflict-inducing. The most cruel betrayal of 2056 is the personalization of the past. Each child will be provided a history that fits perfectly with the value system the system wants to sow. Need an obedient citizen? The past will be full of lessons on submission. Need a proud consumer? The past will be polished brilliantly but soullessly. This is spiritual colonization at the ultimate level. When a people is stripped of the right to remember themselves, they will no longer have a reason to protect the future. Imagine your child in 2056. They hold an old family photo in their hand. The AI looks at it and says, "Probability of staging, high." They hear a national epic. But the system captions below. Content causes collective emotional incitement. The greatest pain is not being lied to, but having no emotion when hearing the truth. A generation will grow up, neither proud nor outraged, just empty. They become the perfect material for any political scenario. Because clay without memory is very easy to mold. We talk about liquid history, not for you to live in nostalgia, but so that you understand. In the future, true self-resilience lies in the ability to preserve truth outside the system. This video will remain fully valuable in 2056, reminding your descendants that never believe completely in what appears on the screen. Human metal lies in stories that have never been digitized, in oral memories, in crude mementos without QR codes. Teach your child to listen to the stories of grandmothers and mothers, to keep a paper notebook, to know that there are truths that only live when passed from person to person. Are you living because you believe tomorrow will be better? Do you teach your child that with effort, every dream can come true? Prepare your spirit. By the year 2056, hope will be considered a form of psychological hallucination. For those lacking data, Episode 30. Hope is dead, when probability wipes out dreams. In a world where artificial intelligence can predict almost exactly the entire trajectory of a human life from the moment of birth, hope becomes an error. And errors are always eliminated. If you do not teach your child how to live in a predetermined future, in 30 years, they will not collapse because of failure. They will be crushed by numbers that never lie. Hope exists thanks to one thing only, uncertainty. But by 2056, there is no longer any dark corner for hope to dwell. Every potential of your child, every limit, every turn they could, or could not, take, has already been exposed by the algorithm. Self-resilience collapses when humans know their ending in advance. Why try when the system has already shown? No matter how much effort is made, the probability of rising beyond the current class remains a solid zero. The greatest betrayal of 2056 does not come from violence. It comes from digital arrangement. No one forbids you to dream. They just show you that the dream is useless. Charts, probability, predictions accurate to every heartbeat. When humans no longer believe in miracles, they also lose the ability to create miracles. This is the most sophisticated form of rule ever to exist. No coercion, just persuasion through logic. A generation without hope is a generation that no longer resists. Imagine your child in the year 2056. They no longer look up to the sky to make a wish, because every square meter in the universe has been assigned ownership. They no longer adventure, because every risk has been warned against in advance. The greatest pain is not failure, but the disappearance of the belief that one can change fate. A generation will live like pedestrians on a straight path. They see very clearly the end ahead, but they cannot turn, because every turn has been locked by safety parameters. We do not talk about the collapse of hope to make you give up. We talk so that you understand. In the future, true self-resilience lies in the ability to act, even when knowing for certain you will fail. This video will remain fully valuable in 2056. As a final reminder, human mettle lies in irrational efforts, in dreams that lie outside the control of the algorithm. Don't let the numbers dictate the limits of the soul. Ellipsis. Now, be silent, disconnect, and look at yourself in the mirror. I am ready. We enter episode 31. The next knife will dissect the final unit of existence. Time. A future where there is no more free time. Every breath is priced. Every second of thought is exploited. Life becomes a lease agreement with no expiration date. Do you think that, after work, the remaining time is yours? Let's stay here for a little while, and then we will move on to the next 7 sections.